Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so pleased that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm Hank Phillippi Ryan, your host, the author of 15 novels of suspense and a USA Today bestseller. This is my newest book that's just out, One Wrong Word. You can see that I can make my face of it. And thanks, it's been out for about 6 weeks now, but after 3 weeks, I can tell you that it went into a second printing, and that is because of you. And I am so thrilled and honored and grateful about that. I am so thrilled and honored and grateful, even more so, to be hosting today Simone St, whose brand new Murder Road is just out. And I can tell you, you all, this is one of the most sinister, terrifying, portentous books I have ever read. From moment one, my jaw was on the floor and I thought, I cannot put this down. And I am so happy to be talking to you today. Simone, welcome to you in Toronto.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is so exciting. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. And I am so honored about this. I promised Simone that I would tell her a story and I wouldn't tell her what it was in the green room before. Hey, Susie Baldwin, hey, Diane, and Shannon Hansen is here, and Emily and Renee, Katie. Oh, it's so nice to see you all. Sharon Bishop and Deborah Press. So nice to see you all. Steph Kiesling. That's what you want to hear about a book. Forgive me, you all, if I sniff. I have been on the road for 6 weeks. I'm losing my voice. I have terrible allergies. It's about nothing would keep me from talking to Simone St. So here's what happened before I sneeze. Last night, and some of you were there, I see, I was at an Unlikely Story bookstore with Lisa Gardner. And one of the people in the audience asked us what we were reading. And Lisa Gardner, and I know who that is, you all. I know who that is, Simone. Lisa Gardner said, "Oh my golly, have you read Murder Road by Simone St. I love that book." And I said, "Oh my gosh, I adore that book. It's the scariest thing I've ever read." So she and I chatted in front of 175 people about how wonderful this book is. What do you think when isn't that great? Lisa Gardner is an icon.
Yes. I know, she's amazing. And she read that book. Like, it wasn't like, we sent her the book or asked her to read it. Like, she just picked it up one day and was like, and she's just been talking about it. And it's just so incredible to hear that from, like, just someone who's at the top of their game like that. Amazing.
Yeah, totally at the top of her game. And it was so interesting to be so connected about it. Of all the gin joints in all the world, we picked the same book to say that we love. And
that's really sweet.
I mean, back before you knew that you were going to be a star writer, when you were just starting, could you imagine being in the spotlight that much and having your books be so lauded and so beloved? What do you think about that?
No, I never imagined that. I always started, I did want to be a published author. I mean, when you start out, you're aspiring to be like published. Like, that sounds really exciting to see your book in a bookstore and like give your mom a copy. And like, that's kind of as far as the ambition goes at the beginning. And other than that, I've always just written the books that I would love to read as a reader, and like the ones that I want that creepy book, and I want that ghost story, and I want something like that has these certain elements, and like I can't find it, so I just write it. And so it really was never about like I don't know, getting into some kind of a spotlight. It was always just trying to tell the story that I really wanted to read, and the story that I had going through my head. And then just hoping that it would just get out there, and like that someone would publish it. That was always just I never really thought past that.
I mean, it's interesting because, and we'll get to more of your questions. And I know I'm supposed to go on to the rest of the interview, but let me ask you, because I do think writing the kind of book you love to read is such a wise thing to do, because I do think that when you're writing the book that you would love to read, that passion comes through on the page, that the readers will feel how connected you are to the book and how much you're enjoying writing the book. And you have found this world full of readers who love the same things that you do.
Yeah, and that's always like so amazing. And because, as you know, the actual writing of the book is a very lonely, isolated process. I mean, you are just sitting alone in a room making stuff up. First, like, for that part of the process after it comes out is different, but the writing is just sitting alone in a room with people and you're talking in your head. And so it's always so exciting when readers, and I just like you, I was on book tour recently, and like when readers come up to you and they're like, this is my favorite book, and like people have got like, they've put little sticky notes of like where they've marked all their favorite parts, and they're bringing you their copy that has been read like to pieces and is full of sticky notes. I mean, like that is so gratifying, just to know that anything you're writing is just reaching anybody. Like I don't even know how, if it reaches one person or 10 people, like it's just so satisfying. It's such a wonderful feeling.
And there's a DNA of a Simone St. James book. I mean,
Yeah.
you know it when you read it. Is that conscious for you? Do you have a way that you know, that thing that you know your readers want, a thing that you know that you want, a way that your style comes out? What do you think is Simone St. James DNA?
Yeah, I've always had from the first, like my first 5 books that I wrote were set in 1920s England, and every book that I've released has been a ghost story. I'll just be straight up with that. They're all ghost stories. But the first 5 I set were historical. They were set in 1920s England, and I was obsessed with that time period for a while, and then I wanted to change time periods, and I just thought, well, okay, what makes a Simone St. James book that, is changing time periods going to change that? Is it going to make it not a Simone St. James book anymore? And I was like, no, the historical time period was one part of it, but really, what people really respond to is the ghost story and the creepiness and the characters and the suspense and like all this stuff. And like, you could put that in a different time period and keep all those other elements, and people would still identify it as my book. And so it was partly what I really like and what I value in the stories and what I find enjoyable, and it's partly what I find the readers really respond to. So I keep some of those same elements. I can change other things around. Like I say, the time period I've bounced around quite a bit, but other elements I keep consistent.
And and Julie says, who doesn't love a really good ghost story? And a really good ghost story can be so many things.
Yeah.
That's the wonderful thing about it. It's boundaried only by your imagination, which apparently has no boundaries. But I do love the idea that you can pick up a Simone St. James book and it'll be the same but different, and that is really glorious. Your style and your characterization, and as I said, your imagination is so supremely individual, and that is one of the things that makes it great. Let me pause for a second and welcome you all to Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. If you are new, and I see so many new people here today and some veterans as well. Sharon Bishop is here and Renee Herskowitz is here, Shanson and Anissa. Anissa says, you can tell how much I love a book by the number of tabs. Diane says, yes, page tabs. Mighty Blaze loves page tabs. Sometimes on an arc like this I will just flip down the page.
Right.
Forgive me. So I know, but it's an arc, and I can't stand it without marking it. Anyway, welcome to Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. If you are new, you should know that Crime Time and A Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic 4 years ago to bring us all together, to keep us discovering new authors and discovering new books and some discoverability in the reading and writing community. And that is what we are here for. And we have persevered since then and plan to continue on and on and on, as long as there are good books, which there are many of. And we are thrilled that you are all here with us. Let me introduce you formally to the fabulous Simone St. James. She is the New York Times and USA Today bestselling author of The Book of Cold Cases, The Sundown Motel, and The Broken Girls. After years of writing and collecting rejections, Simone's debut novel, The Haunting of Mary Clare, as Kim just picked up, good for you, won 2 Rita Awards from Romance Writers of America, that is a huge deal, and an Arthur Ellis Award from the Crime Writers of Canada, another massive deal. An Inquiry into Love and Death, I love that title, was nominated for another Arthur Ellis Award. Simone spent 20 years behind the scenes in television before leaving to write full-time. She lives just outside Toronto, Canada, with her husband and a spoiled rescue cat. She is, listen to this, she is addicted to sushi, rainy days, coffee, and my favorite, murder. What kind of sushi?
Well, just about any kind, honestly. Just about any kind. It's my favorite food.
Is there sushi in Toronto?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Excellent. Really good.
All right. Okay, and now I'm hungry. So let me show you. You see the cover. This is an advanced copy. The cover with that road, and you
Yeah.
see inside that aerial view of the road. And Simone, if you don't mind, I'm just going to read the first paragraph, okay?
Sure.
Because
Sure.
you all listen to this. Chapter 1. That July night seemed full of possibility, with the empty highway stretching out before us. I had just woken up from a nap in the passenger seat, my head foggy as I remembered where we were. I took off my flip-flops and pulled my bare legs up, crossing them and running my hands through my hair. The digital clock on the dash said it was 2 in the morning, and the road didn't look like the same road we'd been on when I fell asleep. I wondered where we were going. There was no way I would fall asleep again. We're lost, I said. All right, who could possibly stop reading that? Did you get chills when you wrote that, like I did when I read that?
Well, the original idea for this book came when like that first scene came into my head, and I thought about two people on a road at night, and they see a hitchhiker. And as a writer, you're introducing your characters, and so from the very beginning, it's like it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you see someone at the side of the road who maybe needs help. Do you stop or do you drive by? And that's the first thing that your character is either going to do, one or the other, and it's one type of person or another type of person. So like that's your first thing. You're like, who is this person? Are they the type of person to stop, or are they the type of person to even like accelerate and like, I'm not stopped? So I just kind of had this idea in my head of these people, and like, would they stop? And if they stopped and picked her up, then what would happen? And then I thought, well, who are these people and what kind of people are they? And then I came up with the idea that they were not only married, but they were just married. They were married the day before. So they're on the way to their honeymoon. They are on the first day of marriage. And then they get into this, this situation that is a dangerous situation. So I really like that idea that these two characters, they're in love and they know each other, but on the very first day of marriage, you might not know everything about the other person yet. And so now they have to really, like, from day one, rely on each other, like in life and death situations. And so you're dropping these characters in, and like I was like, I want to know who these people are and what their deal is and what happens next and what else I can do to them, and what other situations I can put them into. And so yeah, that the origin of this book started with that first scene in my mind.
Well, it is chilling and it is compelling. And when you read the whole thing and then go back to that, it's completely metaphorical. It's completely multi-layered. Things mean way more than they feel like they
Yeah.
mean. That is the sign of a big, fabulous book, which is what we are talking about today, Murder Road by Simone St. James. Because one of the things about growing a good character is that their personality, their psychology, their motivation, their psyche is revealed by what they do.
Right.
And that's what you take that pivotal moment where there are all kinds of decisions to make, and we're thinking, as readers, we're thinking what we would do or not do,
Yes.
what
Right.
our new husband or wife would do or
Right.
not do, and there's only a moment to make that decision. I mean,
Right.
speeding down the highway. So and she says we're lost. So talk a little bit about how that scene grew, and then as much as you can tell us about what happens after that.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I'm not going to spoil anything because everything I'm going to say is in chapter 1.
Yes.
But they see someone walking by the side of the road who looks maybe they need help. They do slow down. They do stop. It's a young woman. They let her come into the car, and after she's in the car, they realize that she's bleeding because she's been attacked. So now, of course, I've set the book in 1995. So there's no GPS, there's no cell phone. They can't call 911. They have to keep driving and find a hospital and bring her to a hospital. And she ends up dying. So my couple ends up in the middle of a murder investigation. They're potentially witnesses, and they're also potentially suspects because this young woman died in their car, and the cops confiscate their car. So they're stuck in town. So it just sort of builds from there. And the road that they were driving on, they learn, has like an urban legend of a ghost that haunts that road because there have been a series of unsolved murders along that road. So they're drawn into this small town, this specific case of this young woman who died, and this road that has an urban legend and a bunch of unsolved murders. And I figured, that's a lot of trouble for these two to get into, and I want to know how they're going to deal with it. So I just let them do it.
And well, that is seriously in chapter 1. I mean, that you could make
that is all chapter 1. I'm not spoiling anything past chapter 1 right there.
Not spoiling anything. And I'm intrigued by when you said, I want to know what happens. So you didn't know when you started writing that? Or
No,
did you?
not when I first started it. When I first came up with the idea, and I let the idea sort of play around. I let all my ideas sort of play around in my mind for a long time before I even like pitch them to my publisher or write the first chapters. Like I let them go around in my mind because I want to know, is this enough of an idea for a book? Am I intrigued enough? Is there enough here for a whole book? And then, so it kind of went around in my mind for a long time. And then I started writing it because I was just sort of like playing around with it still. And then once I take it to my publisher, I have a very overall, very high level idea of what the answer to the mystery is, but I don't know chapter by chapter what happens. I just sort of know overall what the answer is, like who done it, sort of. But I don't know how they get there, and I don't know all the twists and turns, and I don't know chapter by chapter. So I do a bit of planning, but I don't plan everything.
I mean, it's interesting. I was talking to Dennis Lehane at one point, who said when he has a book concept, he sort of knows A and M and Z,
Yeah.
but he doesn't know the letters in between. He doesn't know how he's going to get to those places. So a lot of what happens in Murder Road evolved as you wrote it. What is that like to discover your own story?
Yeah, that's the only way I know how to do it. And I'll give you an example. Again, this is very early in the book. I said the cops confiscate their car. So the cops drop them off at this B&B, local B&B in town. And this woman answers the door, who owns the B&B, and lets them in. And that was just supposed to be a character with one line, and just on and off. And then her name is Rose, and she came into the scene, and I thought, well, first of all, what's her story? Like, what's her deal? And second of all, I thought, well, a woman who owns a B&B in this small town would know a heck of a lot of gossip. So I thought, well, why would I just throw this character away? I think she's got more to say to this story. And she ended up being a secondary character in the story, and one that readers have really responded to. And I didn't know that until she came on the page, and I thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to use this character's got more to tell me, and it's got a lot more to tell my main characters. So I'm not letting her go.
And the way you create her B&B,
yeah,
completely sinister. I mean, I'm so cinematic. We'll talk about setting in a minute, but just specifically about the decor of this B&B. Can you let us in a little bit about, and where did that even come from? It is the creepiest on the surface, like the whole book. On the surface, just fine,
mm-hmm.
but underneath, like one onion layer underneath, it is the scariest thing in the world. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, Rose's B&B is based on a B&B that I did stay in a long time ago, many years ago, for like 1 or 2 nights. And I'm not even going to say where it was because in case it's still there. But it was cluttered. It was absolutely cluttered with knickknacks and like little, like, just shelves and shelves of little dolls and baskets and this and that, and figurines. And I remember at the time like being like, oh my God, this is so weird, but it's kind of quaint but also weird. So I added that in, but then I also added in, Rose it's set in 1995. Rose is a huge fan of Princess Diana, and Princess Diana's picture is on every wall, looking at you everywhere you go. So she's just really loves Princess Diana. I just thought, well, I don't know. That just came to me, and Princess Diana was a big deal in 1995. I remember 1995 very well. And, she's been passed away for so long that, she's still a big deal, but we don't really remember what a big deal she was when she was alive. She was a major celebrity. So I just kind of added Princess Diana in there because I thought I like her. I like Princess Diana.
I do too. But in the book, because we know what happened, and we know about that story, it adds a layer of sorrow and sinisterness and portentousness in the book, just by that casual thing, which even Rose didn't know.
Yeah, the reader knows that at some point in the future, Rose is going to be really crushed. Yeah. Like, you just know that. Yeah.
I was at a B&B on my book tour, parenthetically, and when I went into the the place, and it was beautiful, no knickknacks.
Mhm.
It did have a lot of pictures. Well, never mind. The proprietor said, and we're very proud this B&B was built in 1912. He says that's when the Titanic sank. And I thought, great,
What does that
not
have to do with it?
sure of your marketing here, but okay, if that's what you want to say.
Sure.
I love that you said it in 1995, and I was going to mention that because someone was saying in the comments, would I have stopped? Would my Uber have stopped? And I thought, well, what would I have done? And I thought, well, I would call someone. I'd call 911 or I'd call the police and I'd let someone know. And then I thought, oh, 1995, they couldn't do that.
Right.
How top of mind was that to you to take away all those devices and all that technology? And why did you decide to do that?
Yeah, that's setting it in 1995 was, first of all, like I say, I'm old enough to remember it very well. So it was a bit of a nostalgia trip. But also as a suspense writer, like I really wanted to take these characters and put them into like real danger and make them really lost. Like that first chapter, she says, like you just read it. She says, we're lost. They have to be really lost. There's no GPS. They can't call anybody. She's like opening the glove box and unfolding the map, trying to find the line on the map. And they don't know where they turned. And like, I remember being really lost in the pre-GPS days, and it was no fun. And so I just really wanted to have these characters. Like I say, I put them into this situation, and to add to it, I just made it so that they can't, there's a lot of technology that they just don't have the access to yet. And they got to get in their car, go talk to people, and they got to call people up, and they got to look in phone books, and they got to go to the library and look stuff up. And like, there's all these extra layers. And to me, it just added to the atmosphere. It added to the suspense. And it also just added, it added that nostalgia factor.
And also it adds to their ingenuity and their determination and their knowledge and their desire and, their stakes. They have to figure things out, and they have to be smart enough based on what we know why they know and what we don't quite yet know why they know how to do things.
Right.
And you're so skilled at spooling out secrets, as you were saying earlier when we began talking, that when you're married, you know each other kinda, but you don't know each other totally. And each of them has a secret, many secrets that they may or may not have revealed to their new spouse. Was that fun for you to put together?
It was really fun. And I liked the book is told exclusively from April's point of view. So you're only in the wife's head, April's head. And so there's an added mystery there because her husband, Eddie, you only see him through her eyes. You only know about him what she knows about him. And also because you're in her head, you know that she has things she hasn't told him yet. So it was, I think if I had written it, like gone back and forth on both POVs, would have been less interesting. But because you're only in April's point of view, you only see her husband through her eyes, and you only know what she knows. And you are learning things about him as she is learning them. And I really enjoyed that tension. I really enjoyed that slow reveal. I really enjoyed, and she has things that he doesn't know yet. And she's trying to figure out, like, how can I keep this from him, or should I keep this from him? And that's a lot of stuff that happens in the beginning of a relationship or a marriage. And it's not necessarily to do with like the suspense, like everyone who goes through it, like a crazy suspense plot, but you do have your unraveling where you're like, I didn't know this about you. Like, why did I not know this? And how am I going to reveal this thing? And I really enjoyed that. I like writing the suspense and the tension and the action and all that stuff, but I also love digging deep into the characters and the characters' relationships and how they change and unravel and move and deepen. I love all that stuff.
And also you know that you have the power as the author, that you know what she doesn't know.
Yes.
And you know what we, the readers, don't know. And you know what we the readers are assuming, because we are in April's head. So we're seeing the world through April's eyes, as you said, but you know something else. So you're holding the reins of our knowledge of the story and our understanding of the story. But we do know that April keeps saying everyone underestimates Eddie, everyone underestimates him. And we always wonder, why does she keep saying that? Now, the other characters in the book, equally fabulous, again, through April's eyes, a group of kids and a very interesting array of law enforcement officials. Can you talk a little bit about the town and where we are, and also about that street, that road, Atticus line? That is, again, Simone, the queen of creepiness. Where did that road name come from?
I don't know. I just came up with that. The name I just came up with. I don't know where I got that. It's not based on any real case. It's not based on a real urban legend. It's not based on a real town. I just made it. I just like to fabricate when I'm doing this stuff. I just fabricate it. I don't base anything on real cases. Um, and yeah, the town is. I just sort of, because you're in April's point of view. Like the way the police work is kind of foggy because she knows nothing about it. So cops are just kind of showing up, and like they're having their own internal arguments. Like the various cops are like arguing with each other, and she's like, I don't know how any of this. So it just adds to the lost feeling where you're like, this law enforcement is like, what do they know, what do they want, and how do they even work, and how does any of this work? Because the average person doesn't know any of that stuff. And so that kind of intentionally made that kind of confusing. Like they like, again, in chapter 1, this young woman dies in the hospital, and it's 3 a.m, and a bunch of police show up at 3 a.m. Like detectives, high level detectives show up at 3 a.m. And like, even like April and Eddie, as to, civilians, are like, that doesn't seem right. But they're like, why do these people show up? Nothing is explained to them. So I really like to add, I use that really just to add to the confusion as an average person not understanding how or why the police are doing what they're doing.
But understanding that there is some motivation, there is some.
Yeah, and like they're both looking at each other, and they're like, it's 3 a.m. Like, why did these people show up so fast? And Eddie was in the army, and he's like, I know a commanding officer when I see one. So that guy is the top dog, and he's bossing these other guys around, but I don't know what he's after, and I don't know why. And like, neither of them know why. So I just really I just layer on the confusion as much as I can in every possible aspect.
And also layer on the tension as well, because Eddie also says, and they're back at the B&B now looking through our suitcases.
Right.
So now you're thinking, oh, is there what's in the suitcase? And everything is possibly evidence, and everything is possibly something that's going to make them guilty of this murder. So lost is such a metaphor throughout this novel. There are many people who are lost. And the search, and we have about 5 minutes left, and I don't want to give away anything, but the search takes them to a sort of group of nomadic people. Can you talk about them also, who are kind of lost?
Yeah, they go to a spot where all the backpacker kids go, and I just remember in the 90s, because I was at that age, backpacking was big for the young people in the 90s, and like, because you could, you finish high school, and before you started college, you could take a summer and just put on a backpack and just go. And like, there was no cell phone, and there was no way, there was no Jeep, and you would just get on Greyhound buses and go around and just stay in cheap hostels and eat cheap food and find other people who were doing the same thing. And it was kind of a big rite of passage for a lot of young people at that time, because you could just walk away and wander away. And so I wanted to capture how fun and a little bit innocent that was, but also there's a dark side to it, because those are the young people that occasionally are getting murdered along this road. And it's hard to solve those cases because they aren't local kids. So I just that's just a very big thing that was in the 90s that I wanted to incorporate into my plot. And yeah, Hunter Beach is sort of at the end of Atticus Line, which is the haunted road. And these kids are just, they're just backpacking. So they're hitchhiking along this road to get to the bus station and back. And it's very dangerous to do that, because occasionally one of them ends up dead along the road.
I hitchhiked once when I was in college, and the person who picked me up yelled at me the entire way, saying, I'm going to call there were no cell phones, of course, in any kind of incarnation, but yelled at me, do you know what could happen to you? Do you know who I could have been? Do you know? I mean, it was already terrifying, and he made it way more terrifying. One of the things I wanted talk a tiny bit about before we go, and then I have one more question, and then we'll get to audience questions. And don't forget, we're giving away, not we're giving away, but Simone and her publisher are giving away a copy of Murder Road to one lucky commenter. So make sure you leave a question or a comment or just general adulation or delight for Simone St. James, and we will spin the wheel of fun in about 2 minutes to see who wins a copy of Murder Road. The rest of you are going to go buy it instantly. I know you will. Anyway, what I want to make clear about this book, and I keep saying it's creepy, and it's creepy and sinister and foreboding, but it is not gory. It is not disturbingly, graphically violent in any way. And that's a line that you really, oops, I just dropped it on the floor. That's disturbing. It's not violent in any way. While I pick up the book, will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that is just, all of my books are like that. And I've always wanted to write the books that I want to read. And I enjoy books that are really creepy, or stories that are just really creepy and really spooky, but don't cross that line into like over the top graphic violence. And one of the things, but also was said in this in the 90s, was that I wanted to recreate with this book the feeling of after you've watched a really good episode of the X-Files or Supernatural or Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or like some of those, we had like supernatural shows in the 90s that were just really fun, and they could be spooky, and like occasionally like some X-Files episodes were like gorier than others, but some were like more sci-fi, but like they just played with these supernatural ideas, and it was fun, and it was exciting, and it was cool, and it was creative, and they would just do all this creative stuff with these supernatural ideas and paranormal sort of plots. And I just wanted to sort of recreate, and like you were mentioning before we came on the air, like the Twilight Zone, like that kind of a feeling, that isn't necessarily horror, like say something like American Horror Story, like really, and so it's just something that I just wanted that feeling, and I wanted to read a book like that, and I had to write it myself.
You did it gorgeously. I was a massive fan of Twilight Zone, and still am.
Yeah.
Some of those episodes I still remember because of, hi, Kate says this. She says this book gives me all the X-Files.
Yeah, I'm a huge X-Files fan. I've been an X-Files fan for 30 years. Yeah.
And it also talks about, hey, Joanne, talks about, it's a little bit about possibilities, and, there's more on heaven and earth than is known in your philosophy.
Yes. Yes.
And what do you think about that? And how do you feel about putting that thought-provoking stuff, the possibilities, in your novels?
Well, I get asked all the time whether I believe in ghosts or not, and I've never seen one myself, but I believe that they're possible, and I believe that most things are possible. So and I know a lot of my readers have strong opinions. A lot of them really, have their own experiences, which they tell me about, and they really believe in various things, and I think that's all possible. So yeah, I like to keep, like, that's a great place to tell your story from, the place of like, it's possible, anything's possible. That sound you're hearing at night, well, maybe that's just a shutter, but maybe it's not. Like, that's possible. So that's just a great place to start a story from. Like, well, what if what you're hearing was not a shutter? What if it was a ghost? Well, then what would you do? So,
well, I'll tell you that in the 1912 house, the Titanic Airbnb where I stayed, B&B where I stayed, I was watching television the first night, the only night I was there. And the remote control for the television was by me on the quilt. And I was not touching it. And it was not button side down, and there was nothing near it. And the television started changing channels without me touching the remote.
Nice. Okay, time to check out.
Okay, 1912, I'm going to sleep. I decided to turn off the television and read.
Yeah.
And I thought, if these pages start turning by themselves, I'm going to call the front desk. And I will tell you, Simone, that I told you I turned off the television.
Yeah.
And in the morning when I woke up, the TV was on.
No.
And I have not turned it on. So
check out and drive away. No, go back. That's me.
I thought, fine, welcome and goodbye. Anyway, enough about ghosts. Robin says, we had a kind woman spirit in one house. 3 of the 4 of us felt her. Yeah, that is, you never know. And that's why we're all open to it. And that's why we love, love, love this book. Let's take a couple of questions from the audience as the time ticks away. Sharon says, hey, Sharon, do you consider ghost stories the same as a supernatural story? Or are there differences? Was paranormal? How do you define it?
Yeah, I would say they're the same thing. I don't think they're significantly different. I think that's
Meaning
the same thing.
Supernatural may not have a ghost, I guess. It may be some other thing.
Well, supernatural, like paranormal could be like demons or vampires or I don't know, werewolves. I don't know, but I think those are all part of the same sort of genre. Yeah.
Not your everyday occurrence. Let's just
exactly.
Not going to happen to you every day. Was this always the title, Murder Road? Asked Shannon Hansen.
No, we had to come up with the title after I wrote. Titles are hard. You probably know this. Titles are hard. But sometimes they're hard. Occasionally you get gifted with an easy title, but we just, my editor and a couple other people, my publisher and we did just brainstormed like a big giant list of titles and came up with a whole bunch of different ones. And this was the one that jumped out to all of us as the best. And we thought it just really worked.
Murder Road. It certainly does. Tells you everything you need to know.
It kind of is. It's a little bit of, it's kind of like, you know what you're getting.
Road on the front. There you are. One more question. Who else has a question? Are you like, Andrea says, okay, are you like any of your characters? That's a sweet question.
I don't think so. I wrote, April in this book is, I mean, I love my characters. I always love my characters, and but doesn't necessarily mean I'm like them. Like April is somebody I think I would probably like to know. I think I would like to hang out with her. She's flawed. She's secretive. She's really tough. She's kind of bold. She's not a shrinking violet type of character, and so I could kind of see it being fun to hang out with her because she just I don't know. I think she would be fun to hang out with. But I don't think she's like me.
Yeah, I don't think she has a lot of secrets and she's had a hard past and she understands how she has to be.
And nothing much actually scares her, which I enjoyed as someone who's scared of I'm scared of ghosts. That's why I write about them. So I like putting myself into a character who's like, well, what is this? I'm going to go find out. Like, I'm not I'm not, even though it's not that she's disbelieving. Like she doesn't think it's a ghost. Like she doesn't think something bad could happen. She knows something bad could happen. And she's like, well, we'll have to fix, like, let's do it. So she's quite refreshing. And so that's not really like me.
Although I will contradict you a tiny bit. That's how you described your writing this book, that something bad happened and you said, go and find out what happens.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the safety of your study, knowing that you had a little bit of control.
Yes.
So that's interesting. When you're in control of the book, as much as any of us is in control, and as much as any of us wants to be in control, that's a powerful moment, isn't it?
It is, and it's also fun for the reader because the reader gets to go to this dangerous place from their reading chair. And, if they know my books, they know that I'm not going to, like we said before, I'm not going to rain a bunch of horrible violence down on them and it's not going to end horribly. And they know that it's going to end up somewhere kind of okay. There's going to be a journey, but, so I think that it's fun for me to, like I said before, put my character in the situation and see what they do. But it's also fun for the reader to just be able to dive into it. That's always my goal. The reader just gets to sit and dive into it for an afternoon or a couple afternoons and in their comfortable chair and, and just come back out and everything is just fine.
And think about all the possibilities and how happy you are that you are not on Murder Road.
Exactly.
You are just reading about it, having the joy of reading about it. Let's spin the wheel of fun and see who is the lucky winner of this fantastic novel. Somebody is going to be very lucky. Look at all of you who are here today. We're so thrilled about that. And the winner will be Kate Hall. That's so great. Welcome, 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 Kate. And you had a great comment earlier. So pleased that you won this book. You will get some info about how to contact me, and I will contact our executive producer, who will contact Simone's publisher, who will get you your book. And that is how that works. Simone, thank you so much for being with us today. This book is phenomenal. I mean, have you had fun with the wonderful reaction?
Yes, I have. And it's, you write the book and you wait months for it to come out. And it's always so exciting when other people have finally read it and want to talk about it. And it's not just living in your head anymore. So it's been wonderful to have people like have read the book and want to talk about it. It's been thrilling. It's been really exciting.
I hope you get a chance to go to Facebook, to Crime Time on Mighty Blaze on Facebook, and just look at all of the wonderful comments. You've had some other questions, and a lot of people are lauding you. So if you're ever having a down day, come and look at all these comments. These are people who love your books and are eager to read it. Let me say before we let Simone go, we're taking next week off because my book is due. And then after that, on April 2nd, we'll be back on a weekly schedule here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze with, drum roll, Amy Tintera.
I haven't read that one yet. I haven't read it yet, but I actually have it on deck. I want to read it.
Me too. This is what I'm going to do instead of writing my book. Maybe not. But we will be here on April 2nd for Amy Tintera and Listen for the Lie, which is, again, getting lots of marvelous reviews. And let me close by thanking you again, Simone St. James, for the real joy of reading Murder Road. It is quite a treat. Thank you for being here. I hope you had fun.
I did. And thank you so much for having me. And thank you everyone for coming. You're just so wonderful. Thank you so much.
I so agree. They are wonderful. Absolutely so. Yeah. So remember, we will see you back here on April the 2nd. I will make sure that you know about it. And remember, until then, it is always safe inside a book. And we will see you then. Bye, everyone.